This is the Dodcast. I'm your host, Nathaniel Dodson. In today's podcast, I sat down with Jaleel King, a photographer from right here in Philadelphia. To say that Jaleel has had a life a little different than the rest of us would be a bit of an understatement. Jaleel's photography is predominantly a street-style photography from his very own unique angle using his own style. In our discussion, Jaleel and I dive deep into his life story, how he was shot and almost killed as a young child in a random act of violence, his optimistic outlook on life while working with the unique set of challenges he's been dealt, his search for love, some of his favorite camera gear and his transition from Canon to Sony, and some of his thoughts with regard to that, an unlikely trip to Australia, and we even spend a few minutes discussing gun control. We pretty well cover all the bases on this, the second episode of the Dodcast. So I think we're rolling.
We are rolling.
Welcome into the Dodcast. It's my podcast where I talk about stuff that I want to talk about with people that are cool. And today we've got Jaleel King. Jaleel, thanks for being on the show, man. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. I hope I am cool enough to be here.
Well, with a last name like that, I wonder how you don't think you're royalty all the time.
Oh man, I try not to let it get to my head, but you know, people like to call me the king.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like to think there'll only ever be two kings on my podcast: Larry King and Jaleel King.
There we go.
The only two kings worth giving a darn about.
Here we go.
So walk me through, if you don't mind. The first thing, obviously, people are gonna notice when they sit down and watch. You're a photographer,
Right.
passionate about photography, the whole bit. What's the story with the wheelchair? What happened? How did you get there? I'm sure you're sick of telling the story, but give it to me if you could.
You know, the crazy thing is like it's never like, you know, you never get sick of it. It just is what it is, as far as I'm concerned. You know, it's the proverbial elephant in a room. So it's like, why, you know, instead of shying away from it, rather, might as well just embrace it. So I like to have fun with it as much as possible personally, but you know, some people, you know, figure it out.
Yeah, I've heard you say I got to find a girl who's willing to push me around.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You know, I got to find me a girl who likes a man she can push around. So, you know what I mean? And if nothing else, she's always got a ride everywhere she goes. Yeah. So, you know,
exactly.
One of those kinds of situations. But for me, like, you know, the story I have the most fun with when I tell them is about the time, you know, my mom had took me to a circus and thought it was a great idea for me to ride the elephant. And the elephant decided to give me a hug with its trunk and broke my little back. And the last thing I remember is them shooting the elephant. And that's why I was in a wheelchair. And then you see people's faces like, holy shit, like that, did that really happen? It's like, nah, but if it did, it would have been really sad that they killed the damn elephant, you know? I mean, so like, but you know.
My back, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. You know what I mean? But no, you know, when I was 8 years old, you know, I was outside playing with firecrackers with, you know, some of my friends. We had an adult lighting firecrackers, and a man decided to come outside with a sawed-off shotgun, and for whatever reason, you know, I took off running in one direction, and last thing I heard was a shot go off, and I woke up in the hospital paralyzed.
When something like that happens, you're 8 years old, so you have a pretty vivid memory of what happened?
Yeah, out of everything that I can remember, it's part of the reason why I'm a photographer, because my memory sucks. But that I do remember, like that. It's kind of like one of those things that's just kind of ingrained. I kind of remember even most of what I did that day, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, it's bizarre to think about, because I've had people tell me, you know, if you think about it, there was one day that your parents picked you up and put you down and never picked you up again. But you had the unfortunate opportunity to, like, that was the last day that, because you're paralyzed from what, the waist down?
Right.
Is that correct?
Right. I'm an incomplete pair, so I still have some feeling and motion below my waist.
Oh, okay. So the fact that you can remember what happened that day is kind of this, man, because you were old enough to remember it.
Right.
And that's kind of strange. Do you find yourself, I don't know how to ask the question. Like I find that when there are people who you run into who either lose a limb or multiple limbs or deal with a paralysis in this way or that way, they tend to be very effusive, and they have this gratitude that it's kind of like, if anybody should be miserable in this life, you got a bad lot, so to speak.
And so how do you deal with it? Like, because you obviously remember what it was like to have legs. Like, I mean, you still have legs, but you remember what it was.
To be able to walk and run and things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, like nowadays for me, those kinds of things are like a distant memory.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of weird because sometimes in my dreams I still can walk and run and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it's like I came to a realization of why I play so many video games is because that's the only place that I can fucking do all that shit.
That's so funny, but like so sad at the same time. To hear
You know what I
say
mean? So
that,
I could
right.
go, running around beating the shit out of people in video games, that I couldn't really do here,
Well, I saw you out in the hallway, right? And this is the kind of thing that like strikes me. There's an extension cord across the way. You had to wheel your wheelchair and just bump over it.
Right.
I so take for granted just being like, well, you just step right over it.
Step right over it.
Plain as day. It's
There's
like
always-
taking a breath.
I mean, but I think that's the thing that makes it's one of these things I like to, I like to think that when you are kind of at the bottom, there's nowhere else but to look but up. You know what I mean? And so we take for granted, it makes it a lot easier for you to kind of be a little bit more fair about things, of how things should be, why these things should be fair. And, you understand that not everything's going to be fair, but you can make things a lot easier. And so with that said is we all take for granted something. I mean, I've been in situations where I've taken some things for granted.
Of course.
But we ultimately learn to not take them for granted or appreciate them a little bit more. And with that said, it's one of those situations, it's like, you notice that now, but there's a lot of people who don't have friends who have disabilities. And so with that said, you don't notice X, Y, and Z until you're with somebody who has that, and all of a sudden now you're more pissed than the person who's dealing with this shit because you realize, like, wait, why is this not like this? And why is this like that? And
right. You've gone through it 100 times.
I've gone through it 100 times.
Right.
So it's, for me, it's just like, it's whatever. You know what I mean? But at the same time, then it gets into these situations where you start feeling like you don't want to be inconveniencing people. So, you know what I mean? And I deal with that when I go out sometimes and, we got to catch a cab and a cab's not wheelchair. So we've got to wait around and I feel bad that my friends are waiting around because of me. You know what I mean? So there's always some aspect of it that kind of you think about, you know what I mean? But
wow. Okay, that makes sense. Now, so this happened when you were 8, and you just a moment ago said, you kind of there's this almost yearning for justice, and you understand this. You understood the concept of that, I guess I should say, at a younger age. So it was something. What were you like as, let's say, a 15-year-old kid? Like, what was 15-year-old Jaleel like? Were you getting into photography then? Did you have hobbies? What was life like then?
I mean, at 15
or 16 or 17,
Yeah, I mean, I was in foster care.
Okay.
At that time. And so, I lived outside of Philadelphia. I had a good foster mom, and you know what I mean? I think she tried to provide the most balanced situation for me as possible. So it was interesting. It's just, but I was in a location that I wasn't necessarily familiar with. For me, it was like my first experience directly with racism, being called, a nigger. Just for the simple fact of being, for no other reason than being. It wasn't like I was being nasty or mean to people. At least I like to hope to think that wasn't what it was. But the cool thing about it is that despite that, I had a lot of people who kind of counterbalanced that. And a lot of that counterbalance came from people that you least likely expected. So I think that was helpful. I was into trains. I'm still a big train nut.
I did see in your bio you said something about a railroader, and I'm like, what?
I love railroads.
What does that mean?
I used to collect, HO trains, what I mean? But I have an apartment, and my apartment is probably smaller than this room we're in right now, and so I have no room to set up any of that stuff. But I've transformed that into being more on the digital side, so now all my trains are in the computer and stuff like that.
Little railroad tycoon.
Yeah, every so often I break out a run. A little time consuming, but you break out a run. It was one of those things I used to do. I mean, I remember before I got shot, I just want to say, sometimes some things happen to slow your ass down. But I remember when I was maybe 5, 6 years old, before I moved to where I was living at, I used to walk the train tracks in South Philly. Yeah,
Hello.
right? And, what I mean? And one day the train came by, and I didn't even hear it creeping up because it was an electric train.
Oh, shoot.
And, and I finally noticed it. And I'm short as it is, and so you imagine this little 6-year-old, 6-year-old kid. My mom gave me a lot of freedom. I'm not going to hold you. I had a lot of freedom, and I did what the hell I.
That's cool. That might be part of where the creativity comes from too.
And I just remember going to the side of the tracks in time when his train was coming, and it was a GG1. And so if anybody ever looks up a GG1, it was probably like one of the second to the last major American electric locos.
It's
fast, but they were using it on a freight run. It used to be a passenger train. The train was built in like the 1920s, like late 1920s. It's a very distinct locomotive, and it's very huge. And so, I'm like this big, if you, it was just
trying to get off the tracks.
It's like looking at a dinosaur. I mean, like just.
And then with a horn, did it have a horn?
It had a horn. I'm pretty sure I heard the horn, but as the train was coming by, it was just one of these things. I was still a small kid, but it's the most impressive thing I think I can ever remember. And to this day, it's still my favorite train. It's my favorite locomotive. Yeah, just because it's just like, I was like, wow.
Yeah, I had a brush with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the train horn and the airplane taking off are the only two sounds I think that you can feel.
You can feel.
You can feel the displacement of air.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of wild. So talking about your mom, was she still around when you went?
My mom's still around.
So what was, if you don't mind talking about it, what was the deal with the foster care?
So
was it the situation changed so rapidly?
It changed really rapidly for her. She didn't get the help that I think she needed in ways that should have been provided. But I also think that there was a lot of it's kind of weird because it's like I'm talking from her perspective, and it's just from my perspective, I know that she didn't get the help that she needed. There was a church that came in and said they would help me and my mom out after I got shot, and they were related to the man who shot me. And my biggest problem with them was that, not that they really didn't do much in my eyes, but the problem I ultimately had with this church was that they didn't do anything for my mother. And when I went to go confront the pastor of the church, he was like, well, last time I heard you were doing good, and this was this and this, and it's like, dude, you realize I've been in foster care for the past 3 years.
Right.
You haven't called my mother. No one said anything. Hey, Sister King, are you okay? Do you need something? And I think that's the shit that just pissed me off the most. You know what I mean? It's not what you didn't do for me. It's what you didn't do for my mother when she needed. And for you guys not to send somebody to help her out, or to at least make sure she was okay. And my mom, she went through some stuff, with, some substance abuses and stuff like that. So it wasn't easy, and she also had her own shit that she technically was dealing with from her past.
So you guys have a good relationship, though?
We have a I mean, that's my mom. She gets on my nerves. I mean,
gets on your nerves, but at the same time can do no wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I love my mom. I mean? There's nothing more to really be said about that. I mean? She made decisions that she thought were right. And, in a lot of ways, I think she made good decisions that ultimately benefited my outlook, with being more being able to explore life a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Yes, there are indeed struggles and challenges, but at the same time, I can either let them define me or I can define it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know what I mean? And I'd be lying if I said I never had issues where I'm like,
of course, man.
Fuck this, I'm not doing this. You know what I mean? Like, just from the sense of like, I don't want to be bothered because of the disability, or I don't want to inconvenience somebody because of the whole disability thing. It's just the nature of the beast sometimes. And there's some people out here who says, zero fucks given in relations to how you feel about things.
Well, it's interesting too that you say that, because it's kind of like the normal effort that sort of the rest of us would have to give to do a certain thing.
Right.
You have to go a little above and beyond, kind of no matter what it is. And I understand it might be, whatever, take it or leave it, but you seem like you're being pretty humble about the situation. And it's the kind of thing where, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's easy to say because I'm not in a wheelchair, but it seems like it would be a very difficult thing to kind of get used to and adjust to. And you're still out being a photographer on top of it.
Right. Listen, life is always what we make it. You know what I mean? I know people who have zero things wrong with them and they walk around more disabled than I do. And it's just a reality. Like I see people and I'm just like, dude, you're like, you know how many people would love to be in your position right now?
You got it made.
You got it made, or I would love to have your fucking problems. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, like, I keep it real, man. Like, for me, this is why when people say, well, are you mind talking about it? I don't, because it just is what it is. And the more I talk about it, the more okay I become with myself. And it's like, yeah, it happened young, but this still doesn't take away from the fact that there are things that I feel as though personally I may never have behind it. You know what I mean? For me, I don't know whether I'll ever have children. I would love to be a father. I don't know whether I'll ever be in a relationship that's allows me to be married. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that people take for granted in a lot of ways. And then there's the shit that people ought to embrace in different ways. And it's just the same idea. It's just like when you notice that I had to, do a little willy over a court. That's just so, you don't see a crip, tripping out of his wheelchair. That's the funniest shit ever. And I've done that before where, I'm trying to impress somebody and I says, I got this. Go do a Papa Willie to go down a couple steps and boop right out the damn wheelchair. Gotta laugh at yourself. But like I said, there are things that we notice because we're in it, and there's things that we'll never notice because we're not in it. It's the same idea when people say what they hate or what they don't like about XYZ people, pick anything. It's because we don't know somebody who's been in those situations. We can't empathize. We are built to empathize. We are built to be connected. We are built to embrace. We're a social creature. We're not meant to be hateful, and that's a possibility, but those are the things that happen that are outside of social norms, no matter where you go.
Yeah, and there is that extraordinarily powerful feeling, I guess you could call it, when you're able to actually put yourself in somebody else's position. Like, actually, and not say what do I think they feel, but what would I feel? Not what would I think, but what would I feel? Do I feel scared? Do I feel hopeless? Do I feel like everybody around here is out to get me?
Right.
You know what I mean? That kind of situation. I think that's very hard for a lot of people to do.
It is. And I mean, but sometimes you have to, because you'll have a better understanding of what people get through. And things are not clearly black and white. And there are things that people clearly do to survive and to struggle, and we don't always agree with. But I mean, like, sometimes you take a chance and talk to people, you're like, all right, I understand. I don't have to like it, but I understand it a little bit better.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's the same thing, like, going back to that, the situation. And, like I said, if you don't have somebody in your life that's, in a similar situation, there are a lot of things that you overlook. And then, it's the thing is, like, when, I'm out with my friends and we're going someplace and they're like, yeah, Jaleel, so, I totally forgot because now got to go up some stairs, or, and they're not thinking about the stairs. It's like, all right, we got you. I'm like, do I really want to? I've been in situations where I'm like looking and it's just like flights of stairs, and I don't, people can't see how high these ceilings are, but can you imagine a flight of steps that are this high, and having somebody say, we got you, and it's just like, oh,
right. Yeah, my life is in your hands.
My life is in your hands, but damn it, am I inconveniencing you?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean? But now, at the same time, for me personally, I have to really keep saying to myself, people are doing this because they want you there. People are okay with this because they like being around you.
Yeah, dude, who wouldn't want to be around you?
Well, right now, ladies, I'm just saying.
No. So tell me a little bit about, like, what does your mom think about the photography? Was she there when you started getting into photography? How did all that happen?
So the crazy thing about it is like, my mom and my dad, to be perfectly honest with you, were both kind of artists in their own way.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They kind of had a feel for it. My dad being an engineer, and then my mom, she went to school for doing some photography. She had some paint stuff. She did some painting. And I definitely remember as a kid I was into the arts. But ultimately what ended up happening is my mom's friend, Mr. Benny, had came over to my house one day. And I had showed him a couple of pictures that I had taken, and he was like, oh, this is nice. He says, you like photography? It's like, yeah, I'm liking it, but I only have this camera, and at the time it was like a little Kodak point and shoot camera. Yeah, you know what I mean? Listen, we're still talking film days. You know what I mean? I started with film. Now I'm not the guy who goes into the dark room and develops his own shit, but we're talking about film. And he says, oh, okay, well, come on, let's go. This is where we're going. We're going to go to my house. So we drove to his house, and I don't know, I think I went in his house. I'm pretty sure he took me in. And he had came downstairs with a bag and opened it up, and it was a Canon AE1 programmed and some FD lenses and stuff.
Very cool.
He says, like, yo, now you got a better camera. You can go ahead and use this.
How old were you at this point?
Maybe 23.
Okay, so you're in your 20s.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s.
That's really cool. And what kind of stuff did you go out and shoot right away?
I shot a lot of street stuff because it was easy. You just kind of like, I didn't have a car at the time, and it just kind of just
You roll up on someone.
Roll up on something and just snap off. And I mean, truthfully, at first, I mean, I'm looking at some of my old film stuff. I mean, it was like flowers and shit like that.
Well, yeah, we all do that, right?
Atypical starter photography eye. You know what I mean? But as I got better and started upgrading the gear, not necessarily because of the gear, but just because of constantly shooting, I realized that certain things with some of my older stuff before I went digital is still pretty much where I'm at now in relations to just at least composition and where my eye goes. So that's pretty cool.
I've looked through your portfolio. You have a lot of black and white stuff you shoot. Were you shooting a lot of black and white on film as well?
Not as much because it was hard to find
Okay.
places to get developed that wasn't, super expensive. And at the time, I mean,
Yeah, you got to buy all that film.
you gotta
24
buy
exposures at a shot,
36, you know what I mean? Like, listen, I remember there were times where it took me weeks to get my film out. And because I was, on my own for the first time, I wasn't exactly great with money, but even still, I didn't have any money.
I always remember I used to hate not buying the film, but I used to hate having to pay to have it turned into photos.
Oh,
I used to be like, why am I paying? Now, I was much younger at the time. I didn't realize all the work that went into it. I thought you just unravel it and print the pictures. Be done with it. What's the big deal?
No. If I was smart.
Little did I know.
Yeah, if I was smart, what I should have done was just get a contact sheet and the film developed and then just called it a day and then went back and decided what I wanted to get printed. You know what I mean? No, not I. I had to get the double prints and all that extra shit. Come in and ready to get my film. $40 and I'm just like, I'm gonna have to come back for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, oh shit. And that was not cheap. That was not cheap at all. So it made you really have to think about what you wanted to shoot and what you were shooting and what you were going to waste your film on.
Yeah. Can't spray and pray.
Not at all.
Now, when did the sort of switch from this is a lot of fun to do take place from that to I can make money doing this? Or did somebody approach you and say, shoot my kid's birthday party or my wedding? Or how did you move into start taking jobs and exploring? I mean, because you do studio stuff now, whether paid or TF or whatever you're doing. You're doing all kinds of different stuff. So that change takes place at some point. Do you remember when that happened?
I went to school for video production.
Okay.
So I went to Art Institute for video production, and I enjoyed my time there. And it was one of those situations where photography was still always there underlying. I never really did anything with it like on any like pro level or anything like that, but I was still there. And I distinctly remember when I decided to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and make this. It was hard to try to get production going here in the city for me. And I dealt with the very same things that I still deal with.
You're talking about video production?
Video production.
Okay.
Where, I dealt with more or less people apprehensive about hiring me because of my disability.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's that? That's got to be something that you have to tackle.
It's always something. You know what I mean? I remember having one guy who did like video depositions, and his thing was he loved me, he loved my resume, but he was realistic and he was honest with me. He says, the only problem I have is I don't know how you would do it because some of these doctors' offices are in their attics. And I wouldn't know what the hell I'm hitting until I get there.
Right, okay.
You know what I mean? And as much as I would love to have hired you, like this is what I'm dealing with. And I said, okay. I tried to get a job at, KYW one time, and I don't know whatever happened with that. What the heck was the
Another station in town?
It was not another station in town. It was a production company that was actually in town.
Okay.
And what they did was what they used to do a lot of TLC stuff like, I'm having a baby, I'm getting married. I forget, but
Okay.
I can't remember what the name of it. But that never fell through. And one of the executive producers there, he actually left the job by the time, so it was just like person that I was, so it just was always something. And the biggest slap in the face was trying to go out to be, to do production assistant work on a independent short movie about people with disabilities, and the person who was in charge of hiring me was uncomfortable with my disability.
Yeah, that's kind of, are you sure you got the right guy here?
Yeah, it's just like, it was a movie about people with disabilities, but you didn't want to hire somebody with a disability. So it's just like, the fuck, man.
Wow.
So, one of my best friends, in school, like, he always try to find a way to keep me in a loop with something. So when he had something going on, we had something going on.
Very cool.
And one of the things he had was there was at the time he was living here, a music producer by the name of Simon Illa. And we were working on trying to do like a reality show for him because he had a form of dwarfism that kept him in in a power chair, you know what I mean? And he did an episode of Miami Ink or something like that, and people were like really hitting him up about that. So he thought that might have been a good time. So one of the episodes that we were filming for, he was having a photo shoot. And a photographer by the name of Kelly Taruso had came out to shoot him. And at the time she came, she had her Canon 1D, whatever light she had that was battery powered.
They flashed.
Big flash. And but it was a one light setup and it was simple. And it was me, Simon, Godfrey, my buddy Godfrey, and a couple of people that Simon knew all in the photo. And when I saw the end results, I said, well, holy shit.
One light.
One light. Not only that, but if she could do it, I could do it. And the thing is like
she was working alone.
She was working alone.
Okay.
But the thing about it, it was more than just about her. It was mostly about her being alone because I felt as though when I was doing video production, I had to have everybody.
Yeah, it's a team. You hear everyone say it's a team.
It's a team,
You need
and
a team.
if you have a breakdown and you get nothing, and yeah, there are some things that I could do on my own, but at the time, I didn't have the money for a 3-chip CCD camera that would do these things, and this shit was not
Remember
what it is with
the
DSLR.
Canon, the Angular.
Listen, it was a whole nother ball game before everything went went digital.
Yeah.
An hour you shot an hour of footage. It was an hour dump. You know what I mean? And then you had to go through that footage to create. It was, I actually enjoyed the challenge. I still enjoy it sometimes, but that was what I was faced with. And at that point, I knew that what I saw her do was where I wanted to be at. That was my standard. And so as it stands right now, my standard was pretty fucking high. And I thought that if I kept my standard high, even if I never reached it, I'm still always reaching for it. And what that meant for me was that I'm never resting on the last good thing I think I did.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the more dangerous things you can do is set low expectations and achieve them.
Right.
Like it's better to set the high expectations and not quite live up to it because you'll far surpass those low expectations.
You do. I think the only bad part about it is that you get down on yourself.
Yeah.
I'm my own worst enemy with shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, you think about it like, oh man, I didn't really set, I wanted to do this, but I didn't.
Yeah.
But the fact is that you're still trying for it. And I think that's important. This is the reason why you need to set the bar high so that you don't settle for the last good thing. I mean, I don't know how many times I've gone on social media or someplace else, and this is kind of assholing of me, but where you see somebody who's less talented than yourself and or another photographer that who's doing something or who's got a crap ton of followers. Not that followers actually equal money, but that's just me.
Right, you get the big job and you look and you're like,
but you see mediocrity.
I'm technically better than you.
Yeah, but it feels like mediocrity is the new good enough. You know what I mean? And it's like it's annoying. It's annoying as an artist. It's annoying when you're struggling to make a name for yourself and you're striving for this expectation that you placed on yourself, and to see that, well, what was I doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's like dating a girl, dating somebody and you spend all this money to wine and dine them and do all these things, and then they end up with this guy who basically is on somebody's couch.
Yeah, right.
Like, well, what the hell was I doing all this for? Like, I could have saved some money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't want to feel like that. And I don't think anybody should feel like that with any craft that they decide to take up on. You should not feel that way. Just keep doing you. So I've learned that it's best to try. I'm not going to tell people not to because it's hard. To try not to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you do, and eventually it will come through. I remember there was an old blog, and I forget the guy's name now, but there was something on his blog. I think he was a film shooter still, and it was one of the things about people becoming famous and or being known for their work. And it was very interesting, and I've always kind of remembered the loose translation of it.
Okay.
And it boiled down to some people can be at the starting, at the start line at the same time, and somebody's going to finish first. finish faster than what you finish, but it doesn't mean that you won't finish. The fact is that for some people, it just takes them longer to get there. And that's what I feel like it is for me right now. There's some things that I still feel like I need to do. I was always afraid of failing, so I tried to do everything right, but I needed to fail.
And the one thing that you're going to control in a situation like that is the effort you put forth.
Right.
Right. Like I always hear like football players when they're coming off the field, it's like I can lose the game, but if I know I gave it my all, I can live with it. Like
Right.
it still is no fun, of course.
Still no fun,
But if at least I can go to my grave, so to speak, or I can go home and eat dinner.
Do the best I can.
Right.
You know
Exactly.
I mean? And it's one of those things like Japanese tell their kids and basically say that, do your best. Because it's like, not do good, do your best. Because if you did your best, then you did good.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so instead of putting that expectation of,
That's a cool way to think
you know
about
what I mean,
it.
of putting it, it's like, yo, just do your best. Because if
Yeah.
you did your best, you
You're
should
gonna
feel
do
good
good.
about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You feel good about it. Like, yeah, no, you may not. If the best foot you put forward still failed, and you did your best, there's nothing for you to feel bad about.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you can't do it again, and it may become,
Right.
may
You get
bear
better the
fruit.
second time around.
Get better the second time
but
around.
it won't hurt as much for that first time.
Exactly.
Okay. So tell me about some of the challenges of street photography. Obviously, when you're rolling around, do you typically roll up to somebody, ask permission? Do you shoot and never interact? How does that work?
So I'm a weird guy in that way.
Well, I knew that.
Yeah. In that it depends. I'm very circumstantial.
Okay.
If I'm a voyeur, so for me, if I can get in and get out without being noticed, then that's what I'm going to do.
Check it out and on your way.
And on my way. If there's something that is absolutely drawing me to a person, then I will cough up the nerve to say, hey, I would love to take your portrait. More people have been okay with it than not. My problem with taking that approach of asking is that there are times when people are kind of relaxed and vulnerable, not in a bad way, that they aren't when you now approach.
Yeah. You put on the camera smile.
They put the camera smile on, and
Yeah.
it's like, no, I don't want you doing that. That's
Right.
not what I need.
I want you.
I want you, and I don't think you realize what I see. You know what I mean? It's the whole adage that goes where I say, it used to be there's like two versions of you, but I think there's like three or more now at this stage. There's the version that you want to be, the version that you are, and the version that people see you as. So you know what I mean? And somewhere in between, there's you. There's
Right.
really you.
Actually, factually.
Right.
What's going on?
Because we don't, when we're on the inside looking out, we never really see who we are and what we really do to people. Because again, I'm hard on myself, so I always think, well, why am I doing anything? What am I doing here?
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what happened when I started, when things took off for me as far as photography is concerned. You know what I mean? And just writing, meeting the right people, and quite honestly, being humble, being vulnerable, and letting yourself say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is, man, this is what you did. I feel for you. You know what I mean? And I just remember that, like, with Mike Alabach, he had did a video on me.
Tattooed Bride?
Yeah. So now he's doing like couples boudoir, which is actually kind of cool.
Never heard of that before.
Yeah, I wish I would have did it. He's probably making like bank fist over hands.
Is he still doing the Tattooed Bride thing?
He still does it, but like I think that like that was the moniker of what he was doing before. So I think he's now transitioning to a lot more portrait.
Yeah, I was gonna say it seems like he's been doing weddings for a little bit of time there.
But I think that he's making some transitions. I think he still does them, but I think the portrait work is starting to really like be a thing. But the couples boudoir stuff he's doing is actually pretty interesting. So you know what I mean. So if people want to take a look at his stuff, but he had did a video called Fearless Jaleel King.
Okay.
And that was what was that kind of set things off. And part of that conversation was, part of the reason for that conversation revolved around being okay with telling my story.
Okay.
So we had
This is a video he shot of you.
He shot a video because see the thing is people sometimes are apprehensive about asking me about my issues.
Okay.
About why I'm in a wheelchair, what was the reason for me being in a wheelchair and all this other. So some people just won't ask because they think it's just too sensitive of a situation,
Right.
story. And that was kind of
They just want to be your friend, Jaleel.
well, yeah, you know what I mean? Nobody wants to hurt my feelings. And it's just like, yeah, no,
I'm a big boy.
Yeah, I'm a big boy. You know what I mean?
the stuff that people thought for why I was in a wheelchair versus the real reason why I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah, because there could be a million different things that go through someone's mind.
Yeah, you know, I had to be doing something wrong, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
No, just being a kid.
Just being a kid.
all I
And
was
it's like,
doing.
oh, this happened to you as a kid? Oh, I didn't think, I thought you may have just been, you know, a bad kid, or you were into something and you messed somebody up. Like,
No, but I almost got hit by a train once. That would have been a story.
that would have been crazy, you know. Then when I hear that, it's like, no, here's a real story. When I was a kid, I climbed over the fence at the Philadelphia airport. You know, that was before security. And I decided to run on a tarmac right as a plane came down and crushed my little back. It was just sad.
Terrible. It was terrible.
So I try to find all kinds of crazy stories just kind of alleviate.
So this video with Mike Allenbach.
Right.
How did that come about? Like, what was... it was all about you being comfortable with talking about you.
So Mike wanted to start doing some other things, and part of the conversation was we had met another photographer up in New Hampshire. Her name, New Hampshire. Make sure I get this right. Jacqueline Greenberg.
Okay.
And she had came to Philly to do a talk for, at the time, one of the Smugma groups we have here. I think they changed the name. But it was one of the Smugma groups we had here. And, like, she was just super awesome. And me and her just connected, and we just like, you know, it's one of those things how you meet somebody and you just didn't know you met like one of your, you know, best friends. Somehow or another you were connected.
Right. Like
and it's just one of those relationships. It's just like, yo, you're just a good, genuine human being, and your energies just vibe, and it's just what it was. So me, her, and Mike all had went out afterwards, and we all got to talking, and she had asked me. And I had told her, it's like, Mike was just like, man, I never knew that. That was just like, dude, you never knew? It's like, nah, man, I just, you know, I didn't want to ask. And, you know, I says, oh, and so he had got to talking, and he says, dude, like, I think it was like maybe a week or so afterwards, we got to talking. He's like, yo, would you mind, you know, coming and, you know, telling me your story, you know, over some food? I'm like, oh yeah, you know, you said the magic word.
You had me at food.
You had me at food. And so, you know, we did the video, and since then, so many amazing things have happened.
It was a great response for the video.
It was a great response to the video. It's had a larger reach than I expected it to have. There's still some people who haven't seen it, and I need to probably repost it. But it's it was a very powerful piece, you know what I mean? And that one of the craziest things that I got was a letter. I got an email a week after the video, like a week after the video came out, and I was shooting a wedding. I didn't even want to open it up, but I opened it up, and it was a guy who basically told me he was about to commit suicide.
Oh, like a physical letter you got?
Nah, it was an email.
Email.
It was an email. And, you know, and for some reason or another, the video came up in one of his feeds, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter or something like that.
Right.
And he watched it, and, you know, he's just like, you know, however, I think 3 minutes, 20 seconds saved my life. You know what I mean? And it's like,
what does that feel like when somebody says something
that's
like that
heavy. I'm not going to lie to you. It's extraordinarily heavy. And it was heavy in a lot of ways because it took a lot of guts for him to write that. That's the first thing. It took an incredible amount of courage for him to write that. Another thing, in an odd way, goes to that whole thing about what we take for granted. His hell, like I tell people all the time, listen, your hell is your hell. People look at me as like, oh, you know, I look at Jaleel, and, you know, he's not complaining. Jaleel complains in his own way.
We all find a way to complain.
We find a way to complain, you know what I mean? And some things are real and some things aren't. But that doesn't mean that just because it could be bad, it doesn't mean that your hell is any less, you know, any less valid. You know what I mean? You know, oh, I stubbed my toe, but Jaleel's in a wheelchair. Yeah, but you still stubbed your fucking toe. It still hurts.
Pain is so relative.
It's so relative. So complain about it now. Don't wallow in it. You know, don't be 3 years ago, I stubbed my toe, so I'm not doing shit. Like, no, you don't do that. Right. You know what I mean? But
do you remember what you said to this guy? Did you respond to him, or was it just something you took it?
I did respond to him.
Private?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did respond to him, and I told him that it took a lot of courage, basically, to do that. And I told him everybody's hell is his own. He had some issues with some back pain, and it was pretty bad. You know what I mean? But I think for me, I took from it like all these things that he had going on that I feel like I'm never going to have. And it's just like, dude, why would you feel like this when you have so many awesome things? You know, married high school sweetheart, couple of kids. You know, it just felt like, man, that would be like so awesome. You know what I mean? You know, and
that goes back to what you said about it just being the lens you look at it through.
It's
so
always
relative.
Gonna be, it's so relative. You know what I mean? And you know, and it's a matter. It's the same idea of you know, depending on what lens you look through, depends on how close or how far something is away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're looking at everything with a wide
in
angle,
or out of focus. Something.
Yeah, that. You know, when you look at something with a wide angle lens, and of course everything is far, but you go ahead and put that telephoto on, boom, it's nice and close to you. Now you can see clear.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's about changing your perspective. You know what I mean? And you know, I'm happy to say that he's still around. I interact with him on social media.
Very cool.
And a part of me, he may not realize it, but a part of me, when I'm able to see some of his feeds, makes me happy because there's been situations that, man, you know, I can say, man, you know what, he was there for this. You know, his kid had got hurt at one point in time, and it was just great to say, you know, oh, you know, dad was there for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, dad was there for that. And so, you know, he can feel embarrassed about the notion of wanting to take his own life, but the reality of it is he still didn't.
Yeah.
And he's still there to be able to enjoy those moments. But again, it's all relative. You know what I mean? You deal with the shit that with the cards that you're handed. You know what I mean? It's the whole reason why I tell people, it's like, yeah, I've been given a lot of lemons and I've made a lot of lemon products. So, you know what I mean? Lemonade.
I'm beyond lemonade.
Yeah, I'm beyond lemonade. You know what I mean? I got lemonade, lemon, you know, popsicles, lemon pie,
made a lemon cake
lemon
the other
tart,
week.
lemon cake, lemon frosting. You know what I mean? Like, yo, you know what I mean? I got some lemon for that salmon if you want. You know, like, come on. Like, you know, and, you know, I'm always reminded of my situation. There is nothing that I am ever going to do to not be reminded of my situation. And, you know, I said something to somebody the other, you know, I went to Vegas for WPPI this year. And one of the projects that I'm working on now is revolves around sex and sexuality and how it relates to people with disabilities. So we're working on a new title of it. So the new title is, I think I'm going to just stick with it because I'm beginning to like it more. But the new title is going to basically be People Don't Know How to Fuck. It's Not About Disability.
Okay. Well, that gets right to the point, I suppose.
It gets right to the point. Whereas the original title was all cerebral, mythos, and I had all. I can read it off to you.
All the fancy words that they make a good
shit.
Kickstarter video.
Yeah,
but...
dude. I mean, listen. I was looking up the dictionary, make sure this was the right word, and so this shit like this gets right to the point. So it's just like, yeah, you know what? Let's get right to the point. But you know, as I was talking to her.
Who is this?
Her name is Kara.
Okay.
I can't remember her last name right off the top of my head, but I was introduced through Danielle, and Kara used to work with the Christopher Reeves Foundation. And the thing is that, like, you know, everything, you know, you start off slow with everything. And for me, it's like you would think that, you know, oh, I would have a whole bunch of people ready to jump in on this project, and I don't. And some of it is my own fault by not promoting and pushing it more. But at the same time, I have to learn that it's okay to ask for help, and I need help. I'm so used to doing shit on my own.
So what's the context of the project? So, if somebody was interested in being a part of it.
So the context of the project is that, like, you know, people with disabilities.
You couples boudoir for them?
Yeah, more or less. It's kind of like that. It's I did a self nude for it.
Okay. Oh, is that the picture of you in the wheelchair with all the paper crumpled up behind you? I looked for a second and I was like, should I look or is it bad of me to look?
No, it's not
but
bad.
Then you had it on your website, so it's...
I put myself out there, man. You know how hard that was? You know what I mean? Like
I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I would have done it.
Yeah,
I have to be 100% honest.
Listen, it's even harder for me because I think about it from the standpoint of...
You don't want to be that circus animal either, right?
No, but, you know, it comes from a different perspective, though. It's not about that. It's about how you feel about yourself and how you see yourself. I mean, you know, I'm not the tallest guy in the world. You know, I've got scars. I feel like, you know, my body's not in super shape, so I've got, you know, these man boobs that I'm hoping somebody will love. You know,
You got to have some triceps pushing that wheelchair around all the time.
I feel like it's fat. I can stand and turn. But see what I'm saying when I say I'm hard on myself?
Right.
See somebody else be like, oh, man, you look great. You know what I mean? You know what Danielle carries? Oh, we thought you looked good in that photo. And I'm just like, oh, God damn it. Where are all the single women who telling me this?
Why is it always the married women that tell me that?
It's always the married women, man. It's just like, damn it, But, I want people to understand, like, so for me, you see me coming because of the wheelchair. Whereas somebody who you can't see crazy.
When I was a younger guy, and I don't know if men go on the prowl, but when I was, kind of like, I'm open to the idea of if I bump into the girl, who ends up being the one who I get married to, I'm ready.
Right.
And there was always a little part of me that was like, it's kind of a numbers game. And, I'm just going to ask enough women. If I spend enough time with enough, girls, eventually I'll find the one.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I tried. There was a couple that I got too attached to. But for the most part, I was able to, we got to a point where it's like, this isn't really going to work out. I'm going to find somebody else. But I was able to just take for granted that I'm going to go out and find somebody else. I couldn't imagine what it feels like. First of all, I would make the approach, and if you shoot me down, fine, I'll ask 3 other girls, and somebody will be cool with me. But the number, I would imagine, is a little bit more difficult to find the one, right?
Oh, it is.
When it comes to you.
Because you have to have somebody who has that empathy, that has that self-awareness that goes beyond themselves.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
they can see the wheelchair, but you can't see that.
Right. You know what I mean? And I'd be lying if I said I've never dealt with somebody whose greatness I didn't see because I didn't appreciate it, because I'm looking at some other dumb shit. You know what I mean? I think it's that whole taking things for granted situation. We've all been there with somebody who, damn, if I had a do-over, I think I probably would have done some things differently.
Right. What are you shooting with these days?
So,
to make a hard left turn from everything we just covered.
Yeah, I know, right? We went super deep to like, let's get back on focus here. Cameras, and more cameras. So here's my thing. So last year, I had won the Sony Impact Award.
Oh, okay.
And so with that, Sony was gracious enough to give me a Sony A7R II and a 24-70 G Master.
Very cool.
And so I shoot with that on occasions. My go-to for my street photography is destroyed, thanks to the Philadelphia Eagles winning the championship, which was my Sony RX100. I love that little camera. Oh, man.
So easy to take around, too, right?
It is. It was. And it got destroyed by beer being spilt all over it. So it's just like crushing.
Better than horse poo, but still, the end result's the same.
Yeah, destroyed. But my current go-to, realistically, is my Fuji X-T2.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
How do you? I heard some people talking about the X-T2. I have a buddy who does some wedding photography, and he was telling me that he shot some weddings with the X-T2, and he felt it just didn't have the depth of a DSLR. And I'm not really sure what he meant by that entirely, but I would imagine it has a lot to do with the lens you're going to put onto it.
I would imagine. I don't know without knowing what glass he's using.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. The one thing that I've noticed, because I brought the Sony with me today, is that pound for pound, it's definitely a lighter solution.
Okay.
That's kind
Then
of
the X-T10 or the X-T2. I'm sorry. You say X-T2?
The X-T2 is a lighter solution than a Sony.
Yeah. Okay.
Once you start putting glass on it.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought you were saying. Okay.
Probably the next lightest thing is the Micro Four Thirds stuff by Panasonic, Olympus stuff. As far as just pure lightweight, that probably would be the best thing. If you really.
But the Fuji, you're getting a nice combination of, you got mirrorless, you got lightweight, and you got nice quality.
You got nice quality. For me personally, I love the tech inside of the Sony cameras.
Okay.
The problem I have is the ergonomics of them. They still need some fine tuning, and I think that
is it? Because I've always looked at them; they seem kind of small to me.
They're small, but they don't. It doesn't feel good in your hands necessarily, and I think that they've updated the camera since I've had it. So they've come out with the A7R3, the A9, and now the A7 III.
Yep.
But all of those have one thing that my camera lacks, which is a joystick, which makes things infinitely more easy.
Yeah.
I'm shocked it took them a third iteration to put one on, but I'm pretty sure that would probably help with some of the ergonomics that I'm feeling are missing. But the
free up
menu
the
system,
thumb.
but the menu systems for the Sony are just atrocious. Like that is just something that absolutely needs to be fixed.
What's the best thing about the Sony?
Honestly, I think the eye focus is actually pretty good, and it actually works even with non-native lenses. So I have a Sigma MC11, so I can still use all my Canon glass on there.
Okay. The MC11, is that the adapter ring?
It's an adapter, so it allows me to use any Canon EF lens on there.
So cool. Okay.
So I mean, I've even attached Tamron lenses on there just for shits and giggles, and it's worked pretty good. Some people say they've had problems. I haven't had any issues so far.
No issues.
No, not since, especially since updating it. I haven't had any issues with it. And there's actually an EF adapter for the Fuji X system, which I'll plan on getting because I still got my my Canon glass, and I don't want to have to reinvest in everything. You know what I mean? Not if I don't have to. But I think by the time the fourth version of the A7 series drops, that's going to be the one that's going to set it all apart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the battery life has gotten better with the Series 3s now, and I think autofocus has gotten slightly better. Canon
and Nikon got to stop sleeping. They got to pick up the pace a little bit. Have you lost faith in Canon? Canon.
Here's the thing, because I've talked to Canon reps before, and the thing about Canon, and this is true. While I as a consumer would ideally like to see them be more innovative and take more chances, the thing that Canon does that even Nikon doesn't do is make a camera that actually is reliable.
Okay.
And when I say that, you haven't had to see them come out with a 5D Mark IIIA because the 5.3 had some issues to fix the back focus or some mess or another. And people have issues with them, but I mean, they're like tanks.
Yeah.
So while no, they're not like the most innovative thing in the world, they definitely will work.
So it's the steady and reliable versus the flashy and the new.
Exactly. But I think that what they should have done was coming from 3 to 4, they should have done something more. Even with the they had chances in between, and the thing is the way the market is moving right now, I don't know how long it's going to take for them to come out with something that's relevant that people are going to okay, I trust you again. They came out with the 600EXs, and those were the best things ever. It beat the hell out of Nikon's flash system.
The SB, whatever.
Yeah, the SB system, but the speed light system. But Nikon had a really good speed light system where they talk to each other really easily versus Canon system, and it just worked. And then they came out with those radio flashes, and it was a wrap. I loved it. You know what I mean? Only thing I hated
no need for line of sight anymore.
No need for line of sight. The only thing I hated was that they didn't do firmware upgrades to allow some of the older cameras that were relevant to take advantage of.
And this is what seems so frustrating to me about what a lot of both Canon and Nikon do. Sony seems willing to use their new cameras to just hammer old cameras. Yep, that old camera, it really isn't the one you want to buy anymore. Whereas Canon, it seems like they forego putting certain features in cameras to make the rest of the line seem more valuable. Or, you got to buy the next camera up to get 4K, let's say.
Right.
And that kind of stuff, it drives me crazy because it's you don't open the market more by doing that. You just close people are going to look elsewhere for solutions.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's the problem is you are recording here with a C100, and this is the problem is that Canon diversifies so much that they feel as though people are going to not buy X, Y, Z because it does this.
Right.
Well, the C100 does things that no DSLR is going to be able to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you go to pan and shoot with that camera, you're not going to get the jello effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a whole different ballgame.
It's a whole different ballgame.
In terms of if you were to pick up and shoot a documentary, I'd much rather have a C1, 2, or 300 and go to war with that than have to, take. And not that a 5D Mark IV is going to be bad or a D8, 10 or anything like that.
But you're not using that for fast action stuff where you need to do a lot of
panning.
Yeah, and even just ergonomics, like holding it all day. Like this has a pistol grip and it's balanced, and you feel. I don't know. There's something to it that it's.
There's always, but that's the thing is like
bigger. It's got the built-in fan. Shoot that C log. Shoot 4K. I mean, the C100 is not going to do 4K,
right. But there's always something that like. Listen, it's put in what you're gonna put in and let it.
Right.
Let
it
go.
be what it is. If you got to cut an old camera, cut it.
Cut it.
Like, wouldn't you rather sell 100,000 of this one camera than 50,000 cameras across your entire line, but keep the line intact?
Right. And that's
what I mean?
And that's what that's where I'm at. And it's like people are like, well, what would you have liked to have seen? Well, I would have liked to have seen you guys do touchscreen. Oh, but pros don't say they want touchscreen. Well, then have an option that you can turn it off.
Right.
I'd rather have it than not have it. Mm-hmm. Because once people start using something,
the funny thing about touchscreen is I didn't think I'd want it until I tried a camera that had it.
Right.
And then I was like, okay.
I don't need touchscreen for everything either. Yeah. Like but it just makes things so easy to be able to go through certain things. And and that was one of the things. I'm like, well, because I think at the time Nikon came out with the D5, I think that had touchscreen or something like that. And I'm like,
okay.
And then so I'm like, well, that was kind of a shitty implementation for touchscreen. And then Canon announced the 1DX Mark II, and I'm like, well, you did no better than Nikon. Like, I kind of expected a little bit more out of you. Well, the pros, it's like, I get the pros, either let them turn it off or just have it there. It's better to have it in there than not have it in there. And it was just like, then what was the point in even having it in here to begin with?
Right, exactly.
You can't access it to go through the menus. It was just kind of like silly. And then they really didn't make any strides with that. You know what I mean? And it's a few things that they didn't. But this is also why I said I like my Fuji, because they have what do they call it? Kaizen. I think it's Kaizen.
Okay.
The Kaizen approach is a Japanese word where it always approving upon.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. If I'm mistaken,
so every iteration get a little better.
Get a little bit better, but they do that through firmware.
Okay.
So
they can reach out and touch you without having to buy a new camera.
Right. You know what I mean? So they're literally still pushing out firmware upgrades for even the XT1, which is now going on 5 years old now, 6 years. Yeah, I think somewhere around there.
Yeah, I don't know the timeline.
And they're still pushing out firmware updates for that.
Wow.
So, and if you've ever followed anything that they've done, that they've so they've improved autofocus, they've improved certain functionality within. And their menus can still stand a little bit of tweaking too, but it's nowhere near as bad as Sony's. I think Canon's menu system is the best, personally, which is why I went Canon to begin with when I went full digital.
Right.
But it's amazing to see what you can do, and like you can do in-camera edits and stuff like that, and connected to the Fuji Instax printer, which is one of the cool things I like, because what I'll do is when I'm on the streets, I'll try to carry the Instax printer with me, and so if I have somebody,
Polaroid.
I'll print out one and give it to somebody.
Okay.
So if I have the opportunity, because I remember when I used to shoot and I didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So now I have an opportunity to actually hand somebody off.
There's something special about being able to hand somebody the photo.
Oh man, what's so cool is that you can even connect that to your phone, and so if you have a Wi-Fi enabled camera, you can send a JPEG to your phone, do a little quick edit in Snapseed or whatever, whatever you're
right to Instagram.
Well, not even then. You can send that from the phone to the printer and send it out to your client.
Okay.
You know how many people I've given that to? Like, oh man, this is so awesome. Thanks.
You came out and you helped with the help portrait that we did a number of years ago, and that was one of the first times where I had just total strangers, and well, not even one of the first times, it was the first time, where you had total strangers coming in off the street. We shot some photos of them, and we had printers set up, and we're just running off portraits of people.
Right.
And it was so cool.
Absolutely. But then you see all those people's faces when they got their photo.
Yeah. And some people would never, you've never seen a picture of themselves before.
Never seen a picture of themselves, or haven't seen one of themselves in 20 years. I love help portrait.
Yeah. It was very cool.
For that reason alone.
Yeah.
So,
moving along. There's this podcast called Hot Ones, and they do an Instagram deep dive with the guests where they bring out this laptop and look through it. But I thought, you know what? We're designers and photographers. We can print. We can print images that are interesting on your Instagram. And I just want to go through a couple of these. So talk to me about this. I thought this is such an interesting photo where you're in the Mandalay Bay.
Right.
We all know what happened a few months ago, October, with the shooting.
Was it only October?
I'm pretty sure it was the beginning of October, 2017. Shooting at the country concert. What does it feel like standing there? Is it goosebumps? I couldn't even imagine.
You know, it's crazy. So, you know, this is when I went to WPBI, and I went there on a song and a prayer, of course. So, you know, I had no place to stay until the morning, and my friend Tamara Lackey was awesome enough.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I know who she is. I don't know her personally, but
yeah,
I know who she is.
She was an awesome person. She's actually a very beautiful person. I mean, just I don't know where she gets the energy from, but she's absolutely awesome. So she allowed me to crash on the couch for a little bit, and when I looked out the window, this was what I saw, and I'm like, yo, this is so crazy. This is surreal to me to see that. This was especially after the whole, you know, school shooting in Florida.
Parkland.
You know what I mean? To see that, and then to see this, and it's just like, man, this just brings it home, because like I didn't put it up on Instagram, but I put it on Facebook, an X-ray of my body, and you can still see all the buckshot and rods in my back from my scoliosis trying to be corrected and stuff. And so when I look at this kind of stuff, it's just like, yo, I look down on this and I still say, you know, we haven't done shit.
So you're angry when you see that?
I'm angry mostly because it's like I'm not anti-gun, despite everything I've gone through.
Right.
But I've come to realize that having a right comes with a lot of responsibility, and the word responsibility is a lot larger than anything when it comes to a right. You have the right to free speech, but it comes with a responsibility, one in which you can get in trouble for. And we don't quite have that same weight applied to one that can kill on a whim. And that's what people don't understand. It's like, I get the idea of wanting to protect oneself and one's family, but how many times has that gone wrong more than it has gone right?
It's gone right a lot.
I
think the statistic is several million times a year a gun is used to defend people.
I think that people, what's not talked about is how many times kids find guns and accidentally shoot themselves or shoot.
Yeah, there was my mother grew up in Long Island, New York, and there was a kid down the block playing with a rifle in the parents' attic and shot and killed his friend.
Right. How many times somebody has an argument with a spouse and they used a gun? So we're talking about legal. I'm talking about legal. This still comes with a responsibility, and I'm not anti.
I understand what you're saying. It's a very tough rope to walk, because I'm a very, like, I love history. I'm a very historical kind of guy, and I am super uncomfortable with the idea when I look around, historically speaking, what happens to countries and peoples when they're disarmed. And that's what scares me. Well, not really scares me, but it leaves me with room for concern.
So here's where my ideals start coming into play when I hear statements like that. Mostly because it's like, if we believe in democracy in this country, and we believe that the government is for the people of the people, then we the people ought to take control of our government. And if we keep electing people who make us scared of the government, that's a problem. We should not fear our government. Our government is of us.
I agree.
If we allow it, though, if we allow that, then of course, then those kinds of situations can happen. And I'm not talking about unarming people, but I think that there ought to be things that happen.
There definitely needs to be more accountability. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about.
There needs to be a lot more accountability.
You can't even drive a damn car without a license. You know what I mean? Like, yo, think about all the things that aren't necessarily rights that we have to go through hoops for, that you don't have to do for these kinds of situations. That man had an arsenal in that hotel room, and there was not one person who thought, maybe him buying, 100,000 rounds or whatever it was not a problem, or him having, seen it that once you get to 5 guns or 5 specific types of weapons, that doesn't like kind of trigger. Well, listen, you can buy this, but you'll have to go talk to, you'll have to go through an extra screening because you've already bought 4 this year.
Right.
Like there's little things that just feel like, all right, yeah, we can figure out a way to make things come together. Well, the cops have been called to your home 30 times, and you know what I mean? Like, so you need to go talk to a police.
Well, there already is Class 3 weaponry. Like, if you want to buy something that's fully automatic for real, you got. I think you got to get like a fingerprint with the sheriff.
Yeah, you got to be you got to be military. You got to be police. But
you got to jump through a lot of hoops.
Today's technology.
But you're talking about making something more difficult for the standard stuff,
right? Because no matter what, any of this stuff can be transformed. We live in a technology age where you're now printing these kinds of stuff. I mean, people can print guns. Literally.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen them.
You know
not in person. I've seen videos.
But I mean, listen, I'm not anti, but listen. We had this conversation about how silly people are, and how savage people are. So yeah, people say guns don't kill people. People kill people. Yeah, people kill people with guns. So it's an art, you know what I mean? And yeah, people used to kill people with knives, but people stood a better chance. You know what I mean? And I get why some people want it, you know what I mean? But there's just a huge responsibility that if you're not prepared mentally, you come out and you can make a mistake.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot to it. I'm very just to give my position, I'm very anti-gun control in general.
Right.
And it's not like I hear what you're saying in terms of like you want to buy 5 rifles in a year, why do you want to do that? I still think though, like the principle in and of itself, there's no principle that's violated, and that's where it's difficult, and I'd have to sit and think about it in terms of principally what's the difference between buying 5,000 rounds and 100,000, right? When you get to that point, should you limit it at 20, right? And like where's a limit that's fair, and what's the, morally speaking, where's the right? Because I think taking away the ability for one to defend themselves is morally indefensible.
Right.
And I know, and I've had friends and things. I try not to argue about it, to be honest with you. But
you
I've
can
had
have
friends.
A rational conversation about it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I agree with you. There's kind of the what are you gonna do if the government wants to come in with tanks anyway? Yada yada yada. Right. But haven't we been in Afghanistan for 13 years?
We're kind of taking it to another. It's that rabbit hole I talked about.
Anyway, so I just thought this was a really interesting photo.
No, but
I thought it was interesting,
but it's just crazy to see that, and like it's in full view. Like there's nothing there, and it's painful to think, is all I'm saying. It's
the lives lost.
The lives lost.
Horrible.
It's horrible.
Horrible. And even affected. Because like your life wasn't lost.
No. But there's somebody who may have very well ended up in a wheelchair too.
Right, exactly. What did they say, 500 wounded or something? Was that some huge, crazy number?
Outrageous, man.
Can't even imagine.
Can't.
Talk to me about this photo. Let's move on. I think it was PPI last year.
Yeah. Actually, it was a couple years ago because I didn't wait. Was that 2017? Oh yeah, I did. I cut my hair down. I had to remember, grew it back.
You look almost like I don't know. Is it Jerry Gionis?
Yeah,
right?
It's Jerry Gionis. Yeah.
Do you guys rub shoulders? I've seen you reference him a few times.
Yeah. He's a friend of mine.
You keep in touch with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's he like?
Honestly, he's another beautiful human being. Him and Melissa just. I met them the first year. I met Jerry beforehand, like just in passing kind of situation. But my first year going to WPPI was kind of that year where I'm now kind of going through some doors, just being, honest about it. And I got to kind of hang out with Jerry and Melissa and Jason Group at the time, who was in charge of WPPI that first year. That first year I was there was this first year. And I just got to sit there and we talked, and I mean, like, it was just interesting. It wasn't about gear and all this. Like, we just kind of talked, and I just loved them, like, just their story, just amazing people. And like, if you ever met Jerry and Melissa,
never met him. Never met either of them.
Genuine people you could ever
very
imagine.
Very down to earth,
very open. So if you have questions, Jerry will sit there, and if he has the time, he will break things down for you, and like, just genuinely a good person. And then, like, and just to see the way him and his wife react to each other, and how he just wants the best for people. And I think that's the best thing to kind of.
Very cool.
Just a very good person.
Yeah.
So anytime he sees me, he likes rubbing my head. But he's just a good dude. I love him.
That's super cool. All right, tell me about this. I believe I was over at your house a number of years ago, and I met a guy who was hanging out at your place, who was putting on this event over in Australia. Can you tell me about This is Australia.
Yeah, you did meet Matt. Yeah,
I met him very briefly. What's the deal with it? I had done some research. Well, first tell me about the conference and Matt and his wife and.
So the conference was called Zero Regrets, and at the time, Matt's wife Katie was involved in an automobile accident, and she nearly lost her life, and she had some issues post accident, with recovery, and he thought that if anything had happened to her, or rather she had a conversation with Matt, that if today was like her last day, that she would have zero regrets, and so they called the conference Zero Regrets. And so that's basically what that was. It was kind of a conference for photographers to kind of get in touch with who they are and why they do what they do.
Down under.
You know what I mean? Down under. So, and it was just like, it was just for you to connect with who you are and what you do and why you do what you do. And it wasn't about, your camera settings. It was very interpersonal kind of stuff going on and connecting with people. And it was just an amazing group of individuals there.
Jeremy Cowart was there, right?
Jeremy Cowart was there. Jeremy Cowart was he was beast mode because I think he came in for like a day and then flew back. So
spend more time in the air than on the ground.
Yeah, more or less. So I think he slept one day and then was flying back out to I think it was LA or something. Like he had a shoot or something like that. I was like, dude, you came out here for that? He was like, yeah, man. Anything for Matt and Katie. I was like, oh my god.
That's pretty cool.
That was brutal. I was out there for a little bit.
Did you gave a talk, right? Mm-hmm. And what kind of stuff did you go over? Was it just your story?
Yeah, so it was my story. It was kind of like, more or less kind of like how we were talking now. So
without the sexual stuff.
Yeah, well,
You hadn't started the project yet, I guess.
Yeah, I hadn't
What
started
year
the
was it? Was it 2015, 2016?
2015, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So you gave a talk?
Yeah, so I gave a talk, and, it was one of these things where I go through these moments where I have self-doubt because I'm asking myself, why am I here? Because I mean, honestly, Nathaniel, I don't know what I do.
The search for purpose.
You know what I mean? And, so when you have people, inviting you someplace, especially like Australia, it's just like, wow, this is such an amazing thing. And the cool thing that, my buddy Tim King said, I think it was either Tim King or James Day said, can you believe photography got us here? I mean, I go up here, and I'm with, people like James Day, Tim King, Lenny and Erica two-man studio. And I'm asking myself, what am I doing here? I'm this black kid from the ghetto, more or less, from the projects, and it's like, how did I get here?
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked this out at 8 years old.
No, I wouldn't have picked this out ever. I've always wanted to go to Australia, but I never would have imagined that I would be here with like so many amazing people. You know what I mean? And then come away with new family. You know what I mean? Yeah. Who were just absolute legend. You know what I mean? And like me and James Day are still super tight. Lenny and Erica, amazing people. Like these are people I still talk to, and and I'm happy for.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
And just being able to spend time with people that you look up to and, ways that you don't, think about it. Like, spending time with Jeremy Cowart, and stuff like that. Yeah, it was just, couldn't ask for a better situation. And look at this. They picked my little fat ass up and put me in the air.
Treated you like a king.
Treated me like a king, man.
That's so cool. So what kind of stuff are you doing these days? Like, what are you up to? What are you shooting? What are you pursuing?
So I'm trying to get better at everything.
A little bit of what was it called? The Japanese?
Yeah, Kenzai.
Kenzai.
Yeah.
A little bit of that going on in your life.
And so right now, I think I'm taking myself back to the basics in a lot of ways, where I'm working on lighting a lot more. Because, I used to, I had helped launch ProPhoto B2s.
I saw that, yeah.
And that was awesome. So I still work with ProPhoto. And an amazing company. It's been nothing but amazing to me. So, coming out of everything, that was the first company that I've really worked with.
Very cool.
So, it's like, oh, wow. And,
yeah.
to be
ProPhoto.
able to do, yeah, ProPhoto. And, but it's been nothing but a good thing. And honestly, the B2 system has been good. I'm not, people pick what they want. I'm not, but for me, it's been very liberating, especially being able to be mobile with with a lighting solution.
Hook it up to the wheelchair.
Right. Because I had that Alien B that I had hooked up and
with the counterweight and it was all
that was dangerous. I'm gonna tell you what.
You look like you're driving around with a crane.
Listen, that's exactly what
Hey,
it
but
was.
it got the job done, didn't it?
It was. Listen, it got the job done some of the time, and and then I got hooked into a tree one time, and then I realized I couldn't hop curbs with it because I would be liable to fall backwards.
Yeah.
No, bounce, man. I'm worried I'm gonna fall backwards.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I'm not expert with wheelchairs, Jaleel. I have to be honest with you.
I gotta pick and choose the directions in which
limiting an already limited situation even more.
Listen, I was asking for it, but it was fun trying to set that thing up. So it definitely helped out a lot, and so that was a lot of fun. So now I'm just trying to become more consistent with my lighting situations.
Studio stuff, location
studio stuff, and then also location stuff.
Okay.
So I'm working, trying to do a little bit better job with working with friends who are also still in that mindset of wanting to kind of improve.
Yeah.
So that we go out and shoot and try to get more
cool.
in line with commercial style work. Because that's what I would like to hope. But I think I would like to do more portrait work as well. Because I saw Mark Sellinger.
Okay, I've heard of him.
And he's did a lot with Rolling Stone stuff.
Okay.
And,
I was gonna say the name is really ringing a bell, but I'm not bringing up a picture of his in my mind.
A lot of the Rolling Stone covers and things like that. Okay. But he was a keynote speaker at one of the WPPIs, and I never heard of him until then. I'm self-taught, so listen,
I don't really read Rolling Stone magazine either, so
yeah, but I do look at their covers, and it was his work is really good, and it was some things that he's done that I enjoyed, and there's a few other photographers that Martin, oh God, I can't get his last name. I can't get his name.
Martin something or other we can call him.
Yeah.
Sorry, Martin.
I'm gonna get lampooned for this one. But his portrait work as well. So some of the more I want to say some of the more celebrity portrait photographers, but I don't care about being able to do celebrity work as much as just being able to give that kind of quality.
Well, and you got in that position for a reason.
Right. And so I just want to be more consistent. And I think that's the important thing, is being consistent and also honing your craft, knowing what you can and cannot do, what works and what doesn't work. I got into a point where I became too comfortable with shooting everything wide open, and I have to not be that comfortable.
Yeah.
So, changing my gear up to making sure that I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing.
When you see the sharpness change from f1.8 to f5.6, you wonder why you didn't start shooting an f5.6 earlier.
It's not even a sharpness, man. It's I got comfortable with high speed sync. And so I can shoot at 1.8 and everything is pretty damn sharp. And
yikes.
You know what I mean? Like, you'd be surprised, man.
You're playing on a knife's edge like that, Jaleel.
Oh, man, but it's so fun. It's so fun. And, but you see some of this stuff. But then what ended up happening is I realized I like a lot more dramatic images with the way shadows and stuff play. And I wasn't getting that.
Shadows is where it's happening.
And then not until I started going down to 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, 13.
13. It's like, oh, now I see what the hell I was doing wrong. So again, making those good mistakes all over again. And I've done that, and I've come up with some pretty good stuff, I like to think. You know what I mean? That I've shot, more recently that would be that kind of thing.
I enjoy your work, man.
So
I enjoy the stuff you do.
I appreciate it.
And it's always been inspiring to me where it's, like, you're going to complain about what? Jaleel's out there shooting this, and you're going to complain about what?
Yeah.
In fact, I met you. I was doing a portrait shoot over on Spring Garden Street,
and I came
and
up
I just saw you bumping up in the wheelchair, and we just hit it off right out the gate.
Man, what you shooting? I remember that day too, man.
That was 2011.
I was out there with a buddy of mine, and we were out there shooting the traffic.
Yeah,
some slow
shutter. It's a nice little spot. Yeah, the bridge moves a little too much for me if you don't tripod it.
That bridge, I didn't realize it bounced that much. That thing is crazy.
Cool, man. I appreciate you being here, dude. I really do. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate who you are. I appreciate you taking the time to come out and talk to me. And
not a problem. I mean, just remember, like, I think one of the things, just, real quick, one of the things I wanted to say, that when I was talking to Karen Danielle was just that I'm always reminded of being in a wheelchair, because every day, every night I go to bed, I got to get out of a wheelchair, and every morning when I wake up, I got to get back into it. So there's nothing that ever stops that. But I define me. And that's what I want people to understand, is that you define you. You know, your story doesn't have to have a bad ending. It can be what you want it. So you can make the best of a situation, or you can make the best of the situation. Hence me making a whole lot of lemonade.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to wrap this one up. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Cool, dude.
Hey, before you go, thanks for checking out my podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to the show using the iTunes link in the video description below. While you're there, I would love it if you would give this podcast an honest review on iTunes. The ratings and reviews are really cool to see. If you don't think the show is worth 5 stars, well, let's just pretend it is. Don't forget, new podcasts arrive every Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with an occasional surprise show on Tuesdays. Until next time, this was the Dodcast.